Welcome. This is the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinscoe, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, Forbes contributor, and general explorer of the service and experience space. On the podcast, I seek out and interview entrepreneurs, leading business people, authors, tech leaders, academics, and generally cool people doing interesting stuff in the service and experience space. Check out the archive at adrianswinscoe.com. That's enough from me. Let's get into the interview. Before we get into the interview, I want to say a big thank you to the folks at Qualtrics. They are sponsoring this episode of the Punk CX podcast ahead of the annual gathering of experienced leaders at Qualtrics X4 in London, which is taking place on June the 6th. There you will hear about some of the best customer experience programs from industry leaders and companies including Belron, Allianz, and Adidas. To find out more and register, then head over to the Qualtrics website. Welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. I am really pleased because I'm here at Qualtrics X4 Summit in Salt Lake City, sat across the table from Zig Serafin, who is the CEO at Qualtrics. Thank you, Zig, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So it's been it's been a great couple of days, been packed full of insights and new innovations and releases and everything else, and my brain feels slightly full. But I wondered if you could give our listeners a brief overview of what has been shared over the last 2 days so we can hear it from that horse's mouth, is it?
Sure. Well, first off, AI is going to be a transformative force in helping businesses to drive revenue growth, expand cost efficiency, but in particular, AI as part of understanding human beings in order to be able to build deeper human connections.
Uh-huh.
And perhaps there's a juxtaposition in that statement because on the one hand, you think AI will make things less human, but the reality is the nature of how we're innovating with AI will actually enable organizations to gain a better understanding of people's needs, preferences, interests, where there's friction, where there's too much effort that's required to do something, and transpire that into much smarter and more swifter action.
Yeah.
And of course, that then can affect the ability to earn better loyalty with the customer and drive revenue and some of the KPIs that most business leaders look for.
Yeah. I mean, it makes it sort of commercially attractive and very real and things. I think the thing that when I was in the media briefing, there was I arrived late because I flew in at 1:00 and then hot-footed it to the hotel and then came to the briefing. And I think at the intro.
On Tuesday.
On Tuesday. Yeah. And then there was it was like the drinking from the hose pipe sort of thing. And I was like, wow. But then after the day one of the keynotes, I was thinking, okay, for me, the arc of the story started to become apparent. It was like listening and then taking action at scale in real time. That's the sort of the thing.
Yes.
And I thought that, well, that's really exciting vision and the demos were great and some of the stuff. And but I had some questions that I wanted to ask you because there was repeated mention about this idea that you've got the largest customer sentiment database, or the largest is described in different ways, the database on the planet. And I wanted to understand, what do you mean by that? How big is it? Where does it kind of come from? Is that just from 20 years worth of experience of just listening and paying attention and being able to pool all that and learn from that? Is that what you're referring to?
Virtually every industry on the planet now is connected to our platform. So as members of industry in healthcare, transportation, retail, government, and they've been innovating on our platform in order to understand what drives human behavior, right? What drives someone's dislike or distaste of something, or someone's delight, or emotional connection. As an example, Porsche, who was on stage, spoke about the fact that it's not enough to have a highly satisfied customer. You have to move it to a whole nother level, which is actually building out an emotional connection. So the data that organizations are able to connect to on behalf of drawing a closer relationship with their customers in a aggregate manner creates the world's largest database of human sentiment, signal on how people are likely to be motivated, et cetera, et cetera. And That's where that comes from.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense because it was mentioned, almost alluded to kind of across a number of different talks. And I was a bit like, tell me more about that. It's the largest on the planet. I was like, no, tell me about that.
Yeah.
But then Brad and his keynote today and on day 2 was starting talking about, particularly and also in the media briefing, but also on the big stage, was talking about how you're developing sort of specific, sort of specialized sort of AI. And he sort of name checked sort of Microsoft and Adobe as taking different approaches. Like Microsoft's doing their stuff is very focused on productivity, and Adobe's very much focused on kind of creativity. That type of stuff. And we talked about like a slew of new products that now you're going to apply, from Qualtrics Assist to attrition analysis to the contact center analysis product. I mean, what I wanted to ask was, does that mean that with all these products, are you developing specific models for those specific different kind of products? And that's why, so that's what you mean by the specialized kind of AI. So is it, and if so, like how, is that related to you also mentioned an AI summit that you had last year, and they were talking about 80 different sort of things that you were working on. Is that almost like what's in the pipeline is almost like this is how far we're going to go with it? Am I right in thinking that?
Well, first off, we have the XM operating system, which is the experience management operating system for businesses to listen, understand, and act on human connections and human signal, right? And so as you learn more about what you're doing well or not well, you can better understand it, process it, and then you can actually activate action. And so the operating system is built much like, for example, on your iPhone, you have an iOS, and that actually serves a purpose of running multiple tasks.
Yeah.
We built an operating system for businesses to be able to span departments and different data sets inside of a company. What we've done is we've infused into that Qualtrics AI. And Qualtrics AI has about 100 different AI models that span sentiment, language understanding, task generation, and many other things. And that transpires into new capabilities. A capability could be semantic search, for example. A capability could be understanding effort and how you score levels of effort that might indicate overexertion of effort in order to be able to complete a task on a digital journey on a website, for example. So the operating system has many new capabilities being introduced into it. And on top of that, we have applications that are then powered by that AI foundation.
Right.
Qualtrics Assist for managers, for example, is an example of an application that shows up inside of their employee suite.
Okay.
Qualtrics for the front lines is an example of capability that will show up as part of what we enable for companies who have frontline workforces and location-oriented businesses. So that's how that comes together.
Right. I see. I mean, so I was trying to understand how it all can piece together. It's and as you say, it's an operating system, but you have all these different sort of specific kind of applications.
Exactly.
But then the thing I thought about when I was listening to all that, and I was a bit like, it's people talked about feedback and listening and closing the loop and all these different things, and it's been a struggle for many organizations, particularly large organizations, to close the loop, to listen and to act on
at scale, especially,
and at scale and at speed. But I've been to a number of different, I think about all these different sort of things. And it's one of the things I find also is that sometimes it's not the technology that's the limiting factor. Sometimes it's the organizations and people themselves, but changing their own behavior and how they do business. And I wondered, like, what you've presented is great. And there were some great use cases and great brands. But how ready do you think the market is for this? I mean, how mature is the market in this sort of like space? And because I just wanted to understand what you're saying is about how ready the market is for this type of approach. And if they're not quite mature enough in their approach, are you kind of going to be helping them sort of to mature their approach, to get them up to speed?
So first off, as an indicator of the maturity of the market, you have, some of the world's most admired companies, for example. I mentioned, that during my keynote, you find that, the majority of them today are already at different stages adoption and use of our system.
Right.
Secondly, if you look at the people who are on the stage here at this conference, you have some of the world's most highest performing company CEOs
Yes.
that have come to this event, and they're talking about how important human connection and experience to the customer, experience to the employee is to the fundamentals of the performance metrics that they're judged by and by Wall Street, for example. And so, for example, Steve Squeri from American Express, Bastian Delta Airlines, Chris Nassetta from Hilton Hotels, and they are a representative set of leaders of many other leaders. We had Robert Otter, from Chief Marketing Officer for Porsche, who was here. But we have, thousands of leaders that have come to this conference from all over the world. And what the common theme is now is you have to operate your organization from an outside-in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What's that mean? Standing in the shoes of a customer means that you don't care about how a company is organized internally, the fact that they have different departments. Standing in the shoes of that customer means that you understand how you show up across a continuum of the journey, which is from the moment that they interact with your digital properties, your website, your apps, to coming into your store, to interacting with your product, to the caring, feeding, and the service life cycle, for instance. And having one thread that's woven through creates a very powerful connected data set, which then gives you a more probabilistic view into where your business is going to go with that one customer or a whole segment of customers that look like that.
Sure.
So most businesses are on a path to want to run their business that way.
Yeah.
But not all businesses are all at the same pace in how that's happening, which is to your second part of your question.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. So what we do as a company is we're not only a technology leader and an innovator in advancing this category, but we also have arms inside the company that help to develop solutions and help to build best practices. And the reason why we're able to do that is we've hired PhD level IO psychologists, master's degree and equivalent or higher practitioners who have worked in industries.
Mm-hmm.
And because they have these industry knowledge, we can go in and partner with it. Now, we also have a partner community. Companies like Ernst & Young, Bain, McKinsey. Yeah. You have companies like Accenture, Deloitte that work with us to help transform a company, not just to go through a digital transformation, but to move into becoming experience-led based businesses. Sure. That's another important dimension. And the last point is we have what's called XM Institute. You go to the XM Institute. It's a separate arm of our company. Over 6,000 practitioners around the world who have been building an accumulated set of best practices, and they're sharing knowledge across industries, which act as catalysts for innovation and actually ultimately help companies become more mature.
And so thank you for that, because I just think that's what I wanted to understand, because it's not just about the kind of the tools; it's also about kind of how ready kind of people are. Like, if the train is moving, it's like whether you can you're fast enough to catch the train, or you're in a position to be able to kind of want to catch the train right now, depending on kind of where you're at and your own kind of.
The common denominator in all of this is the mind of the consumer and the mind of how businesses are making decisions. If you're in a B2B market, if you're in a B2C market, or a B2B to B2C market, everyone's now paying attention to what's going on in other parts of their other industries in order to inform what they need to do to be a leader within their own industry. And that is because you and I, as consumers, we travel multiple industries on a weekly basis. And we pick our favorite brand and we say, okay, why doesn't everything else work like what that brand's able to do?
Indeed.
And then the likelihood of switching a brand when something happens that doesn't meet your expectation is higher than ever these days. And because the switching costs have become low, and 3/4 of the time people are likely will end up switching when things don't go well on a regular basis, the stakes are higher now, which is saying you have to pay attention, and how do you actually become much more connected, become more human in the way that you understand your customer.
Sure. And but it's also the way your platform is organized, where you've got the CX bit, the EX bit, and also the research and strategy and research kind of bit. And it's like, it's listening and acting, not just from an outside-in perspective, but also because you also were talking about the idea that customer experience is also a function of employee experience, and you have to knit those two things together, because it's listening everywhere and improving everything. And I thought it was just really interesting, really exciting. But
We call that cross-experience management. When you go and take the four core experiences of business, your brand, your employee, your product, and your customer, you say, now I want a connected view and understand what's driving, what drives an outcome and how a brand is perceived based upon what's happening with my customer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I also got a thought as well when I was thinking about the all the announcements and how the platform as it's going to play out. It's like you're also going to enter into some new spaces and new markets as well, and it's going to end up because particularly there's a call center kind of product or there's analytics based sort of product, and I was thinking, wow, that you're going to be taking on some big incumbent kind of players that are already in that sort of space, which is going to be interesting. And how do you feel about that? So taking on kind of new markets, is that always the plan?
Well, we have been for several years now in what's called omni-channel analytics, where we can end up analyzing social, call center, digital data, and actually be able to create a synthesized view that is highly predictive of future behaviors by a customer. And we're the only company that actually has the ability to, with purpose, understand what's happening in digital, what's happening in call center, what's happening on the front lines, what's happening within your product, and bring that together into something that's holistic because of the way that we've designed our underlying platform. But in the call center, as you noted, we are enabling whole new levels of innovation where we can assist a call center agent. We can actually be in a position to remove calls from actually having to even take place and having to take place within the call center by solving upstream problems. For instance, if the reason why people are calling your call center is because your billing system is hard to process or hard to work through, why not solve that upstream problem where our technology can uniquely actually intervene and help solve upstream problems to reduce call center traffic. And so that's a new innovation.
Sure.
We can also assist the call center agent to better perform a task and complete that to a proper result. But most importantly, we're always seeking out the root cause in the first place. What we are not doing is trying to become the system that replaces the call center infrastructure. Yeah. So we're not the calling and routing system.
No.
But we are certainly improving and expanding what an analytics system should be able to do in the call center. And yes, we are removing legacy technologies. We're actually saving businesses substantial sums of money because of the fact that we can consolidate all of these different separate listening systems, separate analytic systems that sit sometimes in the call center. Then another type is sitting for the website, and another type is sitting for survey and analytics and social analytics. And we bring it all together on one system, has a huge capital expenditure cost reduction, has a cost of operation reduction, but most importantly, it's far more predictive of what it takes to drive revenue for a company.
Sure. Perfect. Yeah, no, I just thought it makes sense when you're bringing all these kind of like sources of data together and thinking about it, how it all connects. Because I've always been of the opinion that the contact center is a bit like your fire department sort of thing. Is they're the first to hear kind of when something, or your, it's almost like your 911 dispatcher or your 999 kind of call. So they're the ones that hear about the problems kind of like first and foremost.
Well, it's funny. You and I think the same way because I have this old saying, which is, nobody wakes up in the morning looking forward to call the call center.
Yeah, sure.
And the reason why is the call center is the triage room. It's the emergency triage room for all of the things that are not working inside your company.
Yeah.
And so most people feel that there's a success story by saying, well, I got a customer satisfaction rating of XYZ based upon what I did in the call center. And they're running around in circles thinking that they should celebrate the fact that they've got satisfied customers. Problem is you just put a Band-Aid on the problem. That's it. That's all you're measuring. There's no correlation between that and what people are likely going to go do in the future if you aren't fixing the bigger picture, which is what caused the call center call in the first place and what was broken along the continuum of the larger customer journey. And the faster you get ahead of that, the faster you're going to be a leader in your market and also save a lot of money.
Absolutely. So, now we're going to kind of wrap up. I've got to get in the 2 minutes sort of like, we're going to hoik you off stage, kind of like,
the digital hook.
Yeah. So I know that you're, so Qualtrics is sponsoring the podcast for the coming month in the run up to Qualtrics X4 in London on June the 6th. So I just want to say thank you for that. What can folks expect, from X4 in London? Is it going to just be a shrink down version of the big summit, or is it what's going to be different?
What makes it special is European business leaders come together and thought leadership. And obviously, we all know not every market is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so, X4 overall as an event, there's our people bring together ideas, inspiration, new roadmaps for innovation across industries. And I think in Europe, it'll be very special because we'll have an intersection of thoughts that come both globally, but also locally and also country specific, all in one location.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that most people come away with being inspired. Number two is people, even at this event here, we've had roughly 61% of the attendees. It's their first time that they're attending this conference. And most people go back and they leave with one or two very important relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Another person that becomes a thought partner to them, or perhaps someone that inspires them differently in their own career. Or they end up with a buddy that they can use to be able to pick up the phone and say, how do you end up innovating together?
Or maybe to fill a seat at Michelle Obama's kitchen table.
As she said very well in the interview today.
Right. And
of course, we'll have main stage speakers that are interesting people who are amazing people in life, and we'll do the same thing in London. And that also has a profound effect on everyone that attends.
Fantastic. So I just want to say thank you for that. And just want to say thank you for having me along to the summit. Thank you for sponsoring the podcast. Congratulations on a tremendous event, and wish you all the very best and success. And thank you for sharing your time and insight and expertise with me today.
It's my pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinscoe.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinscoe.com. And do tune in again. Thanks very much.